Hey guys, it's Tombox, and this video I've been wanting to make for some time now, so I'm getting around to it right here, which is how to not suck with Chimera. Whether it be branded Chimera, Chimera Melodious, Chimera Illusion, it doesn't matter which variant you're playing. Please, if you do play this deck, know how to play it. You know, if you do get featured, you don't want to embarrass yourself on missing lethal on most of those plays. Alright, so this video is strictly going to be about combos and understanding the game state, and it's going to be crazy. So these are the different lines of combos we're going to be going through here today. We're going to do one Ostinato line just for the sake of just being thorough and explain to you how you can lose with that as well and how to avoid losing with the Ostinato line, because this card is just incredibly powerful and it just makes all of your one card combos that much stronger because they're just separate lines of combos. Then there's the 1CCs, the one card combos. Honestly, not very practical when it comes to the opening turn, but if your opponent does not have hand traps, of course they win games. Simplified game states, they also win games as well. So these are really, really insane. Usually about turn 4 or 5, or maybe even turn 3 if you get lucky, they are where they truly shine in terms of the one card plays. But in any of the opening plays, you should be focusing more on the 2 card to 3 card lines because they are more diverse, they are less predictable, and they can eat hand traps much better. And unlike Snake Eye, this deck is a fusion deck. And unlike Tearlaments, we don't have monsters that automatically generate the fusion for you. You're going to have to dig into some of these spell cards. And this deck is very different because you actually don't need to play that many hand traps. You can choose to play Forbidden Droplet because a lot of the costs they pay for themselves, okay? And Droplet is obviously one of the better cards. Chimera Fusion is obviously your best card because it's a quick play fusion. If there's a more quick play fusions that we could play, we would just dump it all in here because being able to fuse off a Gazelle kind of gauges how well you are doing in that game. If you are unable to fuse off a single Gazelle, you're not going to win that game. That's what I'm saying right now. A lot of it depends on whether or not Gazelle is successfully able to fuse, which is why half the time when you're bricking, it's because you're unable to fetch your fusion cards, and having your fusion cards is just so amazing, which makes it so that you don't need to play that many hand traps. Hand traps typically brick this deck. So, with that being said, let's go over the Ostinato line, and then we're going to look into the one card combo. We'll go through those really, really quickly because there's really not much to explain there. And then we start to diversify ourselves into the 2 card line. Why you should be adding as many copies of this into your hand as possible. Don't forget to normal summon if you can still normal summon just to fetch another copy, because what makes this deck so powerful is that once you dig into the extra deck, it's a lot harder for them to kind of time their effects because you have most of your stuff as quick effects and you can just outpace your opponent and you can just activate them whenever. All right, that's key. Let's jump into the first one. Okay, starting with the Ostinato line. Of course, having Ostinato is one of the key parts. It could be COATL or it could be any of the other combos. So whatever combo combination we saw earlier, Ostinato plus that is just triple negate plus the full combo. And you might even generate additional level 4 bodies, so you can even have access to a Chaos Angel along the way. Regardless, if you play Ostinato, if it gets negated, then you just play your regular line and you play your best to your ability. But in any case, these cards are the ones that are a little bit more diverse when it comes to adapting to your combo. In case there are imperms, you can use Chimera Fusion to kind of tag out and pivot your combo into something that's actually playable. Otherwise, your botcha gets negated, and then you're just kind of sitting with a botcha for no reason. Alright, so Chimera Fusion is very essential for that because we have Magnum, the reliever, that can pivot any of our fusions into that monster, give us additional draws. So that's how Ostinato gets played. We're going to dump into the graveyard the Refrain and the Tam Tam. So those are the 2 key cards we're putting into the graveyard to make our botcha effect, of course, and also the Tam Tam effect, burn your opponent for 500, targeting this card, reducing it by 500, and you get to summon out another copy of Refrain. Right? Refrain effect, that's going to add the Couplet into our hand. Couplet, reveal, summon out the Tam Tam, and because you summoned out Tam Tam while controlling a melodious monster, you get to add a polymerization into your hand. I can activate the Couplet, get the Concerto. Like, all this is still kind of just pretty easy. If this gets imperm, of course, you can just Chimera Fusion. Like I said, the Magnum Reliever pivot line is available. And in this case, you can just go for Concerto, and you can fuse these 2 into your second copy of Botcha. But note that one thing here. If you're already holding a copy of Refrain, you can just choose to only just activate the couplet once, and just put this here, because the Pendulum Summon is not necessary. You have not normal summon. So if you have a 1-card combo, then who cares? Just do your regular play. Because having that negate it just secures your board a lot, because you can still get hit by a Nibiru at this particular point, and if it's Nibiru followed with multiple hand traps, life sucks. You will actually lose. I've lost like that before because multiple hand traps, and then they summon a Snake Eye Ash and you just die. Not very fun. So in this case, because we do have the Refrain in hand, we're just going to overlay for the Absolute Dragon and just dump everything into the graveyard so that you get yourself into a Cross Sheep. Cross Sheep, Chainlink 1 should be the Absolute Dragon, Chainlink 2 should be the Botcha, Chainlink 3 should be the Concerto. So Concerto goes to the bottom of the deck. You're going to draw one random card. I'm just going to pick up a random card here. And then this is going to summon out the Refrain from the graveyard. So you should be targeting the Refrain to summon that out. And then the Absolute Dragon puts out the Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon onto the field in defense mode. This is going to cause the Cross Sheep to trigger to summon back the Tam Tam. In this case, I think I drew the Poly, so there's no additional Poly being added. Regardless, this is kind of where we are right now. And so you don't need to kind of go greedy and like keep the extra body. If you want to keep the extra body, you want to play Chaos and you don't, sure, why not? But in the safer line, you would just take all of your monsters and immediately just make an Appaloosa for your opponent to kind of sit on. So you have triple negate here, and you have the one Omni negate here. Now you can start to play your turn normally. You can even like mess with your opponent by just activating the skill anyway, and then now you can technically still do a Pendulum Summon. And when you do the Pendulum Summon, it doesn't really hurt you that much because you can still keep the negation here. So you're not worried about like, oh, Nib plus Imperm equals GG. So you can still normal summon out your card and just play out your combo from here. So whatever combo that you choose from here, essentially is going to load your entire board full of cards, and your opponent's not going to be able to kind of keep up because you're going to have graveyard negation, you're going to have hand disruption, you're going to have board destruction. Essentially, you're just burying your opponent via card advantage. Okay, simplified lines only. We have the COATL and the Mirror Sword Knight. I'm going to show you guys the OTK and the opening turn because both of these are capable of OTKing via themselves. This one will need an additional card if you're going to be OTKing, so I'm going to put one blank card for this one if we're going to show the OTK. But starting off with COATL adding into the Mirror Sword Knight. Okay, we're going to normal summon the Mirror Sword Knight effect. But this is a simplified game, so we're just going to showcase it this way. Big Wing Berfo effect gets the Gazelle and the Chimera Fusion. Activate the Chimera Fusion, fuse with the Gazelle and the Big Wing Berfo, so we can summon out Berfo, the mythical king of Phantom Beast. Chainlink 1. I guess all of these chain links technically do matter. Chainlink 1, target back the Mirror Sword Knight. Chainlink 2, go for the Gazelle. Chainlink 3, dump a card into the graveyard. Card that we are going to be dumping into the graveyard is going to be Master Tau. I think I showed this to you guys in the why Master Tau is good when no one played Master Tau. So this is going to be dumped into the graveyard, which is going to start a new chain. Gazelle is going to add another monster into my hand, which is going to be just an illusion monster. It's going to go for Nightmare Apprentice. Mirror Sword Knight gets summoned back onto the field. Master Tau effect is going to activate, summon back the COATL, and now we're locked into graveyard summon of only illusion monsters. Activate the Chimera Fusion back to hand, and then you can just activate this fuse for all 4. And if there's a monster on the field, you can essentially just punch it to death via the big Chimera. And one of the best parts about this particular line is that you do load the graveyard with both a COATL and a Mirror Sword Knight, so that you have targeting protection and an activation protection of monster effects. So that, well, an effect negation rather. So this is pretty safe, and you just attack into anything in attack position, you'll essentially just win the game. Now, Mirror Sword Knight can essentially just do the same thing. However, you have to pivot around the fact that, hey, Master Tau won't do anything because Berfo would already summon the one monster. So summon out the Mirror Sword Knight, still use the same effect. We go into the same Berfo, and Berfo effect is going to grab the Chimera Fusion and the Gazelle King of Mythical Claws. Activate these, fuse them away together. We form not Chimera. We're going to go with Berfo, the Mythical King of Phantom Beast, and we're going to activate all of them. So you're going to go Chainlink 1, 2, and 3. So right now, we're still targetable, which is not the greatest look. So we're going to put the COATL into the graveyard. Gazelle's going to add the Apprentice, and Big Wing Berfo is going to summon back the Mirror Sword Knight. So essentially, we're down to 3 hits, so we're not at OTK range. We need the additional body. But if you have an additional monster, then you still have lethal. So at this point, you have one random card. So that one random card is going to be discarded to summon out the Nightmare Apprentice. The Nightmare Apprentice is going to grab you another monster, and you can activate the Chimera Fusion. And now that we have this many illusion monsters, we can do the exact same thing. We fuse for 4, and that lets us flip over the Chimera, the Illusion Beast, and we get to swing 4 times. And once again, we've loaded the graveyard with COATL for targeting protection and a Mirror Sword Knight. That's essentially what this is about. So that's a lethal that I've seen people miss because they're like, oh, Mirror Sword Knight alone can't kill the opponent. I'm like, you're wrong, because it can. As long as you have another single card, you're able to essentially execute this all the same. Okay, so this is the one Mirror Sword Knight play. You can normal summon the Mirror Sword Knight for the opening play, and we summon out into the standard of the Berfo. Doesn't always have to be Berfo. Sometimes if you already have Berfo, you can just go for Gazel, add the Chimera Fusion. Yes, you're not maximizing on the pluses, but you're also not locking yourself out of your extract, because if you don't do it, that means you have access to Lars, Chaos Angel, and all the other really awesome monsters that really throw your opponent off because they think you're like a one-trick pony. And especially when you are under D barrier, that's how you truly pivot out of it. All right. But in any case, we're going to be going for the Berfo here. We're going to get to the Chimera Fusion. We're going to fuse it off. All right. Fuse these 2 off. And we're going to summon out the regular Chimera at this point. Chain link 1, 2, 3. 2 is going to be summoning out this because we're already going to do the hand rip. And then we're going to be adding to our hand. Now, depending on what's in our hand, if we have a card to discard, then we go for the Nightmare Apprentice. If we don't have a card to discard, then we go for the COATL instead. Dump that into the graveyard and then retrieve Chimera Fusion and play like that. But in the case that we do have it, we're going to do like this. Activate Chimera Fusion, put it back in our hand, and we're going to send a card to the graveyard, summon out our Nightmare Apprentice. Apprentice effect. You can actually have a little bit of fun here because you can really diversify the play a little bit. I'm going to go straight for the Diabellze. You don't have to if you don't want to. If you have multiple fusions, like a regular polymerization, this is the kind of the point where you would activate it. And a lot of people are like, hey, you can just go straight into summoning a Diabellze. Yes, you can. So if you play Chimera Fusion and you just fuse these 2 together, then you can put Berfo onto the field. Berfo can throw Master Tau. Master Tau can summon this card onto the field. And there you have it. The problem with this particular field that I don't personally like is that I don't have a Chimera Fusion to activate during my opponent's turn. I mean, against Tenpai, this is still like a lot because this really kind of ruins their day for the most part. And it really, really hurts because they can't imperm, they can't do 90% of the stuff they want to do. They can't sink in Kaiman. Cool. You should be putting this card on the field as much as possible. But on the other hand, say we go back a little bit. Let's just put this back into our hand. This is back here. Before we perform a Chimera Fusion, we have this. There's another line that you can do if you so choose. If you want to really summon out this card, you can technically set this and you can still summon it during your opponent's turn quite simply by activating a Chimera Fusion, fusing these 2 off into the graveyard, all right? And you summon Magnum the Reliever. And from Magnum the Reliever, if you have multiple fusions in your graveyard, you can just put 1 to the bottom that can draw an additional card. But during your opponent's turn, at the start of the turn, you can just banish the Chimera, summon out the Diabellze. And now your opponent's still locked under. Not only that, if they try to activate anything, Magnum the Reliever can actually do a destruction-based effect as well. So that really sucks. And if their opponent sets a card, you activate Diabellze and then you chain the Mirror Sword Knight because you're going to target your own Mirror Sword Knight in their card, and then you're going to chain the Mirror Sword Knight, and then you're going to be able to get into the destruction. So you have more disruptions this way via 2 destruction, and that's all just more or less from just the Mirror Sword Knight. So these are the diversified lines that you should probably know. Okay, 2-card line. I'm just going to do this one quickly because this is not new. So, normal summon Gazelle if you have Gazelle and Mirror Sword Knight together. This is a much safer line. If you eat hand traps and you trade hand traps, at least you have a 1-card combo to follow up. And again, simplified game state, it works better in those cases. But in this case, if they do somehow manage to hit you with an Ash, you can call by these with the support card. But if you don't have call by, it's okay. You can just eat the card and play the Chimera Fusion to keep on going. So in this case, say we did get hit by the Ash, we're going to keep on going. We don't have call by. We're going to activate the Chimera Fusion, fuse these 2 off, summon out the Berfo, the Mythical King of Phantom Beast, chain link 1, chain link 2, I think chain link 1, 2 like that. Grab ourselves the Nightmare Apprentice, and we're going to also dump it into the graveyard. the Master Tao. Master Tao will summon back the Mirror Sword Knight. The whole point here is that we want as many copies of Chimera Fusion as possible. Activate Chimera Fusion, put it back in our hand. And say we do have an additional card, all right? We have an additional card for the Nightmare Apprentice. But in this case, you should just activate the Mirror Sword Knight unless you have other things that you want to crack on the field or you want to overlay, which is totally fine. But right now, we're just going to activate the Mirror Sword Knight, summon out the Big Wing Berfo. Big Wing Berfo will activate the effect, grabbing you these two into your hand, which gives you like a lot of options, okay? From here, you can essentially just set the two cards and pass and you can still generate a massive amount of advantage. But right now, I think what I want to personally do is I want to hand rip my opponent. So we're going to go for Chimera Fusion, and then we're going to fuse away these two if possible. Okay, fusing away these two. It's actually a good thing. We get to summon out our Chimera. Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2. We can summon back the Mirror Sword Knight. This Mirror Sword Knight is actually going to play a pretty pivotal role. So we still have a Chimera Fusion to play against our opponent. And we can summon out the Nightmare Apprentice. I think it's actually still worth it, so we just send to the graveyard a card, and then we get to add a COATL, dump COATL. COATL is going to either get ourselves a Gazel. However, if you want to play a much more aggressive play, then go for the Diabelze instead of the COATL. The reason why is that the Mirror Sword Knight is actually going to help you generate the free summon. So during your opponent's turn, you're going to activate the Mirror Sword Knight. We're going to tribute that, and that's going to summon out the second Big Wing Berfo. And that's going to help you load your hand with another Gazel, another Chimera. Then, when you activate the Chimera Fusion now, you get to fuse away the Diabelze. We're going to go into Guardian Chimera, pop a couple of cards here, but we're going to take these two, and we can take one of the names. We're going to take the Chimera, because it's the weaker one. It doesn't really do anything, and Berfo's just a little bit stronger. This lets you go into Guardian Chimera, destroy 2 cards, draw an additional card, which is already really good. But not only that, because Big Wing Berfo uses fusion material, you get to summon the Diabelze onto the field to mess with your opponent. And even if your opponent clears this or negates the Diabelze, you can banish the Chimera to summon it back onto the field just to really keep your opponent on their toes. Not to mention that they can't really negate it for the most part. I mean, this time we don't have COATL, which kind of sucks, but if they try to like hit you, say with like a monster effect negation or monster effect on the field, you just go Mirror Sword Knight, negate that. It's totally fine. If this hits the graveyard, you can summon back your Chimera. You keep that Chimera name live, and you already have a follow-up preemptively built in. So that's what this particular board offers. And at the start of the turn, you can add back a Chimera Fusion. You kind of clear your opponent from here, and you can overlay these two into like a Lars or something. So that's one of your options to kind of play if you have Gazel and the Mirror Sword Knight. Alright, Nightmare Apprentice and Edgem Chain. Honestly, I could have made a video just entirely just with these two cards and all the different diverse lines you can try for. So I'll talk about it as I go, but I might not show you everything. So starting off with Nightmare Apprentice, so the way the Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2. Chain's going to grab into our hand, of course, the Patchwork, and this is going to grab into our hand a COATL. COATL is diverse because COATL can search into either an illusion or into a beast or a non-beast, whatever it may be. It has the option of just branching into the different directions. But the Patchwork, we're going to activate that right away, and that's going to give us the Poly plus the other copy of Edgem Chain. All right. So that's what we have here. With the COATL, we can choose a different line here. I'm just going to do the line I want to show you first, and then maybe I will diversify back. So kicking it off, we're going to grab for the COATL to Gazel. Alright, so we can normal summon out the Gazel. You don't have to, because you can technically immediately poly, and then if you play the immediate poly version, you're a little bit safer because you can generate a board and then you'll eat the Ash later if Ash is going to be crucial to losing. But if you already have a Chimera Fusion, then I would just completely ignore the Ash as well because you have the full combo. They're going to get pretty destroyed. So in this case, we're going to activate the effect. We're going to grab the Chimera Fusion into our hand. And then we're going to play the Polymerization. We're going to fuse these two together and keep the Edgem Chain. And that's going to summon out, of course, Berfo. that's going to trigger the Gazel and the Berfo. So Berfo is going to put the Mirror Sword Knight into the graveyard. Gazel is going to add Master Tao into hand. This is a bit of a weirder one, alright? So polymerization's in the graveyard. I have an Gym Chain. Activate the Chimera Fusion. We're going to fuse away the Master Tao plus the Berfo fusion. And we're going to summon into Magnum the Reliever. Alright? Magnum the Reliever is the one that we're going to be going for. And that's going to set up a little bit of a chain link here. Master Tao effect, summon back the Mirror Sword Knight. And that's pretty awesome, I think. Well, just kidding. Let's get actually the rest of the board built. We're going to activate Magnum the Reliever. And we're going to put the poly back into the deck so that we can draw an additional card. Well, I put most of my deck over here. So we're just going to take this as the blank card right now. And you can technically also chain the Mirror Sword Knight so you don't draw into like a second Chimera. So now we can summon out the Berfo now. And with the Berfo effect, you can get yourself the Gazel and like an additional Chimera fusion. Right? So this is what we're looking at right now. And if you want to do the hand rip play now, that's also still possible. Now we drew an additional card, activate the Chimera Fusion from the graveyard because we actually haven't used it yet, and we do have a Chimera in the grave, so we're back to 2. But now that we have this, we can activate the Chimera Fusion, we can fuse away these two, get ourselves the hand rip, and activate the Big Wing Berfo to summon back the Mirror Sword Knight. This leaves us with this kind of board, which is still not that bad if you set the Chimera Fusion. You still build a full board, you get the hand rip, you got an extra draw, you still have a Mirror Sword Knight follow-up, and you have, you know, a Chimera Fusion live. So this is still one of the possibilities. And finally, the last hand here, which is Apprentice, Big Wing, and a Poly. Now this one, I don't have it fully explored, so we're going to lab it here right now. We're going to activate the polymerization. We're going to fuse these two away because we get a free summon this way. And we're going to summon into the Berfo, Fusion Berfo, Chain Link 1, Chain Link 2, I guess doesn't really matter. Chain Link 1, Chain Link 2. This is going to summon this back onto the field. And this is going to send something to the graveyard. I think we could use a little bit of protection, and I actually did this before. Probably going to dump into the graveyard. Yeah, I can dump into the graveyard COATL if I'm afraid of targeting negation. This way the Apprentice will resolve and I can get myself a Mirror Sword Knight, and then I can almost summon the Mirror Sword Knight and do the entire play under essentially the same lock. This will fetch me these two, and I can activate the Chimera Fusion, fuse away these, summon it into the Hand Ripper, and there's only Chain Link 1, Chain Link 2. I get to add a card to my hand. I think that's going to be the Illusion. I mean, I could go for like a higher grade Illusion, which would be like another Nightmare Apprentice as a follow-up. I mean, I have my graveyard already loaded, so targeting negation is not even an issue. I should be going for something a little bit more useful. I think it's likely going to be the Witch. This way, no matter how this plays out, it's actually pretty awesome because this Chimera Fusion is going to serve multiple purposes now. Now, I could just immediately just activate the Chimera Fusion here and just fuse away this and the Chimera. And because of that, I'm going to turn it into Magnum the Reliever. Okay. With Magnum on board, I can activate Magnum's effect, put the Poly back to draw an additional new card. Not to mention that on my opponent's turn, I'm going to activate this to summon this Ray onto the board. So there are options to build Disruption. I'm not sure if that's like the best option. I'm just saying that there are more ways that you can kind of rework your line so that you can actually have, you know, the best possible board for the best possible matchup. So what I showed you today are like, oh, 1 card line, 2 card line, 3 card line. Essentially, you're going to have more cards than that. Sometimes you're going to have overlapping lines, and you're going to have to make a little bit of a choice which one you want to go for. Or you can actually do both lines separately and end on like a crazy, ultra combo against your opponent because they couldn't really stop you at all, and you had all the outs against them. That's also a possibility. But usually in a scrappy game of Yu-Gi-Oh, where you're kind of throwing hand traps at your opponent's throwing hand traps at you, the games get a little bit more simplified. So the 2-card combos are typically the ones that kind of secure game, and all you're essentially trying to do with this deck is not break the entire field. You just have to get rid of most of the interruption, leaving an attack position monster so you can finish them off with a Chimera. That is one of the easiest ways to kind of finish your opponent off. Alternatively, if you want to go for game, Chaos Angel is one of the easier ones. You can even summon out Lars, or you can go into Beatrice to kind of give yourself a little bit of an extra setup. These are all options. And Beatrice, some people are opting to try out Farfa because you can activate Poly, send away your Farfa as the fusion material, and then you can use the Farfa to create a chain link block against your opponent as well. So there's a lot of options, and I just want to make sure that you guys don't just think, oh, all these are just linear lines that people can just kind of cookie cutter follow. I don't recommend that at all. I recommend you guys to follow based off of what you see in the game state. I mean, sometimes you got a lame game state where you're just gonna floodgate your opponent and you're gonna win with a floodgate. You just accept those if that's what that's the best suitable option for you. The reason why Berfo is just so strong is because even in your side deck, whether it be like Simul Archfiend, the Archfiend Eris, they are strong. Yes, they will cause a Snake Eye player, essentially they're gonna lose. Sometimes that's all it takes. You just activate a Poly, go for that, dump Eris into the graveyard, and you win the game. You don't have to make things as complicated as possible. This particular deck in particular wants to simplify the game state and punch for game, and that should be the game plan you should be following, rather than try to win via fancy dodging maneuver like that Indiana Jones scene where the guy flips a sword all over the place and Indy just just pew-pews him on the spot. You don't need to make things that fancy, and that's why I'm hoping that you guys would improve with hopefully explore a little bit more with the Chimera lines. That's all I got for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you guys want to see more of me exploring like even different decks, leave it down in the comment section. I mean, this is kind of the point of why I want to do these videos. Yeah, I'm not giving you guys a deck list. If you want to see a deck list, just check out some of the older ones I have available. The deck list didn't really change all that much over the past couple of weeks, so there you have it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.